The moment Mark walked through the door, a brightly wrapped box tucked behind his back, Olivia's heart swelled with a familiar mix of tenderness and apprehension. Inside, she knew, would be another extravagant whim indulged for their daughter. This time, a brand new pair of rollerblades for their daughter Chloe. "How could I deny my princess?" he'd murmur, his eyes alight with adoration for their only child. Chloe, upon seeing the gift, erupted in a flurry of ecstatic squeals and delighted little dances, her joy a brilliant blinding beacon in their cosy living room. Olivia, though, couldn't help but shake her head, a silent sigh escaping her lips. Another indulgence their family budget could barely stretch to cover, yet she held her tongue. In her father's presence, Chloe's smile was so wide, so utterly carefree, that it banished any shadow of financial worry from the house. Later, after dinner, when Chloe had dashed off to a friend's house to flaunt her new treasure, Olivia and Mark lingered in the kitchen sipping tea. He recounted how he'd stumbled upon a sale, a spur-of-the-moment decision he simply couldn't resist. "Look, Liv," he'd enthused, his voice soft with wonder. "Chloe's all grown up, but that joy in her eyes, it's still the same pure childhood delight." Olivia merely nodded, a quiet ache in her chest. She stayed behind to clear the dishes, the gentle clinking of porcelain filling the comfortable silence, as Mark retreated to the living room to watch TV. She heard no complaints of discomfort, no hint of ailing health, just the warm, settling exhaustion of a man who carried happiness home in both hands. The next morning, after a shared breakfast, he left their apartment building with his usual buoyant stride, turning at the last moment to blow Olivia a quick, playful kiss. For a fleeting instant, Olivia imagined the gesture lingering in the cool morning air, holding on a beat longer than usual. She would never have guessed that this ephemeral moment would be the final frame of their family chronicle. Exactly 24 hours before life fractured into a devastating before and an unbearable after. Olivia had loved her husband with a fierce, unwavering devotion, so when he vanished from her life without warning, she simply couldn't fathom why such a cruel, undeserved punishment had fallen upon her. She had done nothing wrong, harmed no one. She had a neighbour, Brenda, whose husband drank, a violent, unpredictable storm of a man who often blamed his misfortunes on his wife, his hands quick to lash out. Brenda would frequently bolt out of her apartment, still in her nightgown and slippers, to sit in the courtyard until he finally passed out. One bitter winter day, Olivia found Brenda shivering in the stairwell, clad only in a flimsy robe and slippers. Olivia, returning from the grocery store, pulled the distraught woman into her warm apartment. "Why do you endure it? Why don't you leave him?" Olivia asked gently over steaming cups of tea, her heart aching for her neighbour. "Oh, but where would I go?" Brenda cried, her voice raw with despair. "To a rented apartment at my age? Without me, he'd turn the place into a pigsty, God forgive me. He'd drink everything away. I just wish he'd die, drink himself to death," Brenda said, her voice laced with such desperate bitterness that she immediately flinched, horrified by her own candour. She began to apologise to justify her words. It was then, listening to Brenda, that Olivia truly couldn't comprehend. Why did her neighbour's husband, a cruel, drunken man, continue to live, while her own Mark, a good, kind, wonderful man, was gone? Mark hadn't drunk. He'd occasionally enjoyed a glass or two of wine on holidays, becoming even more affectionate and warm. Chloe had always taken advantage of those moments, sidling up to him with a sweet smile and whispering a request for something special. The next day he'd invariably go to the store and buy whatever their daughter had asked for. He spoiled his girls utterly. and there had been no warning. Mark had never complained of his health, not once. Then, in a single terrifying instant, he died of an aortic rupture. Olivia struggled to accept it for a long, agonizing time. She blamed the doctors, God, the entire world. Following the well-meaning advice of sympathetic neighbours and acquaintances, she sought solace in the local church. The priest offered comforting words, attempts at explanation, but Olivia, a non-believer, found herself unable to agree. If God exists, she'd argue, would he allow something like this? Yet, despite her doubts, a strange calm had settled in her soul, and Chloe, her vibrant daughter, was a constant, tangible presence, preventing her from succumbing entirely to despair. Time, relentless and unyielding, marched on. The daily cares and necessities of life slowly pushed the raw pain of loss into the background. Now it was just Olivia and Chloe, living on a single salary. Olivia could no longer buy Chloe everything her heart desired, not like before. "But Dad always bought me everything," Chloe would accuse, her voice tinged with bitterness. Olivia would try to explain that her father was gone, that they needed to be patient and wait until payday. And there were bills, rent, groceries, clothes. But then the water meter needed checking. A leaky faucet had to be replaced, consuming what little extra they had. With each new refusal, Chloe would erupt in a full-blown tantrum. "You're always promising, always making excuses. Am I supposed to go to the New Year's party in an old dress? I wish you had died, not Dad. He never denied me anything." Chloe screamed, dissolving into tears. Olivia understood that her daughter spoke those horrific words in a fit of grief and anger, that she would later regret them, but still an unpleasant lingering ache settled in Olivia's heart. Chloe grew, but the rift between mother and daughter only deepened. Olivia still couldn't afford to buy her daughter everything she wanted, and a teenager's desires seemed boundless. After graduating from high school, Chloe announced she wouldn't pursue further education. Instead, she'd get a job. She would buy herself whatever she wanted. No matter how Olivia pleaded, even suggesting a part-time correspondence course, Chloe wouldn't hear of it. She found work as an administrator at a hair salon not far from their home. Her salary? Every penny was spent on herself, and still it wasn't enough. At the salon, Chloe met a man, a handsome, charming older gentleman named Brian. He was 14 years her senior, managed a popular restaurant, and showered her with expensive gifts. One night, Olivia didn't sleep a wink. She called Chloe repeatedly, but her phone was unreachable. The next day, Olivia confronted her, her voice trembling with fear and exhaustion. "Chloe, what are you doing? Why didn't you call? Why was your phone off? I was worried sick, didn't sleep all night. Anything could have happened to you. Aren't you a little young to be going out with men already? You just turned 18. What if you get pregnant? Have you thought about that? And if it's serious, why haven't you introduced him to me?" Olivia, naive and desperate, genuinely believed she could persuade Brian to leave her daughter alone. "Mum, I'm an adult," Chloe bit back, her voice like ice. "Stop hovering over me like I'm a child. Go find a life of your own. You dress like an old woman." "Chloe, what are you saying? I raised you. I struggled. I didn't think about myself, so that you could—" Olivia choked on her words. "Are you ashamed of me?" The realization hit her, hard and painful, and for the 1,000th time she regretted that Mark had died so young, leaving them alone. Chloe merely scoffed, a dismissive sound, and retreated to her room. A week later she announced she was moving in with Brian. Again, she wouldn't listen to her mother, rejecting all advice and warnings with open hostility. After a final, bitter argument, Chloe hastily packed her bags and walked out. Olivia was inconsolable. For an entire week she moved through life like a ghost, dull and listless, making mistakes at work. "What's wrong? You're not yourself," a colleague, Valerie, asked one day. "My daughter left home, Valerie, and I feel like it's all my fault," Olivia confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "Her father spoiled her, so she got used to getting everything she wanted instantly. After he died, I couldn't provide her with the same life. That's why she resented me. She wouldn't even apply to college. She wanted to work, you see, just to buy herself fancy clothes. And that's where she met him, a man 14 years older. How can I not worry?" Valerie, Olivia's colleague, studied her with a knowing, compassionate gaze. "It sounds like your daughter Chloe feels a paternal connection with him, Olivia," Valerie said softly, her voice seasoned with years of observing human nature. "That's why she was drawn to him. You won't achieve anything with arguments and prohibitions, Liv. You'll only make things worse. I, for instance, didn't allow my daughter to marry young. I told her she needed to get an education first, stand on her own 2 feet, and then think about marriage." "And what happened?" Olivia asked, a flicker of something close to hope, or perhaps just curiosity, in her eyes. "And this," Valerie replied, a wry, almost bittersweet smile playing on her lips. "She got her education, built a career, bought her own apartment, a car. She's smart, beautiful, and utterly alone. She's too picky, and no one quite measures up. I suppose her time for falling head over heels in love, for rushing into marriage, has simply passed. She's well into her 30s now. She's seeing a married man, so marriage isn't on the cards for her. I've even resigned myself to her having a child with him." Valerie sighed, a deep, weary sound. "In short, Olivia, my misguided convictions ruined her life. So don't forbid Chloe from seeing whoever she wants. Today's kids, they mature early. All we can do is worry and pray that, in the end, everything works out for them." After that conversation, a measure of calm settled over Olivia. Perhaps it's actually a good thing that her husband will be older than her daughter. But then the anxieties would creep back in. What if Brian doesn't marry her? That could happen too. Olivia's mind churned with worries and possibilities. But one day Chloe finally came home, Brian by her side, and announced they were getting married. They'd already submitted their application to the registrar's office. Olivia exhaled, a shaky breath of relief. Brian was, well, he was presentable, pleasant enough, though a little too self-assured for Olivia's taste. Still, it meant everything would be all right. Remembering Valerie's advice, Olivia tried not to dissuade her daughter from the early marriage. They celebrated the wedding. A subdued affair, but a wedding nonetheless. One weekend, Olivia invited the newlyweds over for lunch. She was surprised when Chloe arrived alone. "Brian's working," Chloe explained, her voice clipped. "And anyway, Mum, you don't need to arrange these big meals. Brian doesn't like those kinds of gatherings. Everything's fine, don't worry," Chloe added, picking reluctantly at her food before making an excuse to leave. Olivia was heartbroken. She felt unneeded, utterly alone. And once again she mourned the early loss of her husband. But he wasn't coming back, and it seemed she was destined to live the rest of her days alone. She'd always tried to be on her daughter's side, never scolding her. But why were their relations so strained? It was as if she weren't even her mother anymore. Olivia often pondered this in the evenings, slowly coming to terms with her solitude. Chloe visited her mother rarely and always alone. She never invited Olivia to her own home. She called a couple of times a week, but their conversations were superficial, never truly intimate. After a few routine pleasantries, Chloe would quickly cut the call short, citing busyness. It even began to seem to Olivia that Brian not only avoided her, but also disapproved of Chloe communicating with her mother. She couldn't understand why. Even on Olivia's birthday, Chloe arrived alone. Brian, she said, was working again. Chloe presented a beautiful bouquet of flowers and a new electric kettle. She stayed for a short while, then prepared to leave. "What is it, darling? Why does your husband avoid me as if I have a contagious disease? Is this normal? I just don't understand what kind of relationship you two have." Olivia pressed, her voice laced with a raw hurt she couldn't hide. "Yes, Mum, our relationship is normal," Chloe waved off impatiently. "He just doesn't like these kinds of things. I told you. He just works a lot." Chloe dismissed her mother's concerns once more. When Chloe announced she was pregnant, Olivia's heart soared. Now, she thought, now her daughter would need her. Surely the young couple wouldn't refuse her help. She remembered how difficult the first few months after giving birth had been, even with Mark's unwavering support. Olivia arrived at the hospital for Chloe's discharge. Brian behaved adequately enough. He greeted her, accepted congratulations, but he didn't invite them back to their home. Chloe merely mouthed, with silent apology, for her mother not to be offended. Olivia walked home, swallowing tears. Was this what she had dreamed of when she gave birth to her daughter? No, she hadn't dreamed of anything specific. She had simply desperately wanted a daughter and had strived to be a good mother to her, but clearly she hadn't tried hard enough. A week later, Olivia still went to Chloe's apartment. Didn't she have the right to see her granddaughter? To hold her? To help? Chloe looked tired, but seemed happy to see her mother. She showed Olivia the large apartment, beautifully furnished, the nursery, then offered her tea while the baby slept peacefully. They had named their daughter Kiko. Olivia remained silent, though she couldn't grasp the modern parents' fascination with foreign names. Aren't there enough beautiful traditional names? Olivia felt her daughter's awkwardness. A heartfelt conversation, as always, proved impossible. When Olivia noticed Chloe glancing at her watch more and more frequently, she asked, "What, darling? Is Brian coming home soon?" Olivia's voice betrayed her disappointment. "Yes, Mum. You know, Brian doesn't like guests. You should come when he's not home," Chloe said, her eyes evasive. "Am I a guest, darling?" A lump formed in Olivia's throat at those words. "All right," she said, her voice trembling. "It really is time for me to go, dear, but I want you to know that I love you, and you can come to me at any time." Olivia said goodbye. She resolved not to impose herself any more. She should be happy that her daughter was managing on her own, but still she missed her. She couldn't resist buying little outfits and toys for the baby. She would stop by for short visits, only when her son-in-law wasn't home. Then one day, Chloe, avoiding Olivia's gaze, told her mother not to spend money on things any more. Not to buy anything. Brian had noticed and scolded her. He didn't like the little outfits and the penny dreadful toys. "Perhaps I shouldn't come at all any more?" Olivia inquired, a sting of hurt in her voice. Chloe remained silent. Olivia, like many mothers, made excuses for her daughter, not taking offence. She was used to living alone. During the week, work was her salvation. Weekends and holidays were the hardest. This spring was early and warm, Olivia took long walks in the park on weekends. One day, resting on a bench, she watched a man, a grandfather perhaps, playing ball with his granddaughter, a little girl of about 6. Olivia smiled, mesmerised by their joyful interaction. Would she never get to play with her granddaughter like that? The man noticed her attention, her wistful smile, and approached her. "My granddaughter is running me ragged, and I often see you here. You're always alone. Don't you have anyone?" "I have a granddaughter and a daughter, but my son-in-law isn't pleased to see me," Olivia confessed, a rare moment of openness. "Honestly, I've only seen my daughter's husband a few times in total, when she introduced us at the wedding and when I met them at the hospital after the baby was born." And so, word by word, they began to talk. From then on weekends, they all walked together in the park. The little girl grew accustomed to Olivia, even often calling her grandma. Olivia now eagerly anticipated their shared walks. Then Peter told her he was going home. "I only came to help," he explained. "My daughter-in-law recently had our second grandchild. It's time for me to go back to my own place. My wife always dreamed of buying a little house by the sea, but she never lived to see it. So I bought one and I live there alone. Olivia, really, come visit me on your vacation. I'll show you such beautiful places." As fate would have it, Olivia's birthday was the very next day. She invited Peter and his granddaughter Mary to celebrate with her. They were sitting at the table, sipping tea, when the doorbell rang. Peter looked at Olivia with a questioning glance. "I'm not expecting anyone," Olivia confessed, a flicker of surprise and mild embarrassment on her face, and went to answer the door. Standing on her porch was Chloe, holding little Kiko in her arms. "Darling, how wonderful you came!" Olivia exclaimed, her heart leaping with a mix of delight and bewildered curiosity. "Come in. Let me introduce you to my friend." Little Mary, Peter's granddaughter, had already scampered into the hallway. "Grandma, who is it?" she chirped, a question that made Chloe's eyes narrow, a spark of indignation flickering there. "This is my daughter and granddaughter," Olivia explained, noticing the swift shift in Chloe's expression. Olivia introduced Chloe to Peter, but sensing a palpable coolness from Chloe, Peter suddenly made a move to leave. "You need to talk to your daughter. We won't get in your way," he whispered to Olivia in the hallway as she walked him out. "Mum, what was that all about? Why do you need that old man? I thought you loved Dad," Chloe began, her voice sharp with accusation, the moment Olivia returned to the living room. "Yes, you're right. I loved him very much," Olivia replied, her voice firm, tinged with a quiet dignity. "But he's been gone for many years now. You don't need me, and you know I'm lonely. Peter truly is my friend, and he's not old at all. When you're my age, Chloe, your husband will look old, as you put it." "You're comparing them, Mum," Chloe scoffed, clearly offended. "Next you'll say you're getting married." "And why not?" Olivia shot back, almost echoing Chloe's own words from years ago. "What don't you like about that?" "I'm an adult, Chloe, and I can decide for myself whether to get married." She paused, her gaze meeting her daughter's. "You know, I have nothing to lose. My own granddaughter barely knows me. To her, I'm just a strange woman, but Mary, she calls me Grandma, and it's so wonderful." Olivia's voice softened, and she looked intently at Chloe. "Why are you so upset? What's happened?" Suddenly, Chloe crumpled, tears streaming down her face. "Brian said I've become a frumpy housewife, uninteresting, and that he doesn't need me like this any more." "Ah, I see," Olivia said, a wave of understanding and a bitter, familiar pain washing over her. He's tired of his young wife, then. You didn't listen to me, Chloe. You didn't pursue your education, and now you have no profession. If you leave your husband, how will you earn a living? Olivia's voice softened, filled with immediate unconditional love. Of course you can live with me. I'd be nothing but happy. Mum, can I pack my things and move in tomorrow? Chloe asked, wiping away her tears, a faint glimmer of hope in her eyes. That evening, Peter called. Well, Liv, did you talk to your daughter? Is everything okay? He asked, his voice gentle. Yes, everything's fine. She's moving in with me tomorrow, can you believe it? Olivia replied, her voice alight with renewed purpose. A pause hung in the air. Then Peter said, Well, there you go, Liv. See? Everything works out for you two. There was a note of sadness in his voice, but in her overwhelming happiness, Olivia didn't notice. The next day, Chloe and Kiko moved in. Now, after work, Olivia hurried home, her steps lighter, her heart full. Kiko slowly began to get used to her, to recognize her face and voice. But after living with her mother for a short while, Chloe, at every turn, began to grow irritated with Olivia again. Her mother did everything wrong. She interfered with her excessive care. Olivia's initial joy quickly faded. One day, Olivia returned home to find no belongings, no daughter, no granddaughter. She immediately called Chloe's cell phone. Yes, Mum, I'm sorry, Brian just showed up, on his knees, begging for forgiveness, so I went back to him. Chloe, did you think this through? Olivia asked, her voice laced with a weary disbelief. Yes, Mum, I've made up my mind, Chloe retorted sharply. And once again, Olivia felt a chilling, familiar emptiness settle around her. Unneeded, adrift, the silence of her apartment pressed in. She found herself back in the familiar solace of the park, but this time Peter wasn't there. The vibrant laughter of children playing, the gentle rustle of leaves, it all felt muted, distant. Taking a deep breath, the decision a fragile butterfly in her chest, she pulled out her phone. Peter, she began, her voice a little unsteady, a raw vulnerability she rarely allowed herself to show. Is your offer... is it still open? Can I come to you? Chloe, she went back to her husband, and I'm just going crazy from loneliness again. The words tumbled out, unvarnished and desperate. Of course, Liv, I'd be delighted. Peter's voice, warm and steady as a summer breeze, instantly cut through the haze of her despair. A lifeline. Just text me when you buy your ticket. Send me the number and I'll meet you. I'll be waiting. Olivia took a deep, liberating breath and booked her ticket. The train journey south was a blur of shifting landscapes, each mile pulling her further from the familiar ache of her old life. Arriving at the small coastal station, a flicker of doubt, a tiny nagging worry, tried to take root. What if he only wanted a housekeeper? But the moment Peter's kind, crinkled eyes met hers across the platform, a genuine, joyful smile spreading across his face, those anxieties dissolved like sea foam. He enveloped her in a warm embrace, a silent promise of comfort and welcome. At his charming, sun-drenched cottage by the sea, Peter was true to his word. He did everything himself, moving with quiet efficiency, barely letting Olivia lift a finger around the house. "You're my guest, Olivia, truly," he'd insisted, a playful glint in his eye. He'd send her and his bright, vivacious granddaughter off to the beach, armed with towels and a picnic basket, while he busied himself with the garden or puttered around the house. The days melted into a blissful rhythm of sun-drenched mornings and peaceful evenings. Olivia tanned, her skin glowing, and more importantly, her spirit blossomed. Laughter came easily now, a genuine, unforced sound. The thought of returning to her old life, to that silent, solitary apartment, became utterly unappealing. "Then don't go back," Peter said one evening, his gaze intent, holding hers. They were sitting on the porch, watching the waves paint the shore. "You can find work here, and Chloe can come visit us. She loves it here. Tell your daughter and granddaughter visit too." "That's unlikely," Olivia countered, a familiar shadow of doubt momentarily touching her voice. "And on what grounds could I stay? What would people say?" The old worries, ingrained from years of life, tried to surface. Peter simply smiled, his eyes twinkling. "What would they say? They'd say nothing if you married me. Olivia, marry me if you really like me. And what's wrong with that? I have a good pension, I'm a former military man, and there's not much to spend money on here. I have our own garden, fresh sea air." His words were simple, heartfelt, brimming with an understated sincerity that touched her deeply. "I'll think about it," Olivia said, a shy smile gracing her lips, a new warmth spreading through her. She truly, deeply liked Peter. But the day of her scheduled departure loomed, and she still hadn't made a definitive decision. Then, on the very morning she was supposed to leave, her phone buzzed. It was Chloe. "Mum, where are you?" Chloe's voice, tinged with an unfamiliar sadness, crackled through the line. "I came over and you're not there." Olivia's heart tightened. She knew instantly that something had happened. "Yes, I'm not there," Olivia confirmed, her voice softer than she'd intended. "I'm down south with Peter. Why?" "Mum, I left Brian," Chloe blurted out, her voice raw, close to tears. "He controls my every move. He's jealous of everything. I can't take it any more. Can I stay with you? When are you coming back?" Olivia's heart surged with a complex rush of emotions. Relief, concern, and that familiar maternal pull. Her daughter needed her. Peter, who had been quietly preparing coffee, looked at Olivia with a sombre, knowing expression as she started to gather her few belongings. "Well, are you just going to keep running to her every time she calls, Liv?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm, cutting through her immediate emotional reaction. "Remember, she already came back to you once. How did that end? She's an adult, an independent woman. Even if she doesn't go back to her husband, let her live on her own 2 feet, not under her mother's wing." Peter's words resonated with a clear, undeniable truth. He was right. It was unlikely Chloe had truly changed. Not yet. She would likely become irritated with her mother again, make demands, and drain her spirit once more. That same evening, with a newfound resolve, Olivia called her daughter. "Chloe, you can live at my place for as long as you want," Olivia said, her voice steady, filled with a quiet strength Chloe rarely heard. "You have the keys. As for me—" She took a breath, a triumphant smile blooming on her face. "You can congratulate me, darling. I'm getting married." "Mum, are you out of your mind?" Chloe's outraged gasp echoed through the phone, clearly stunned by her mother's unexpected declaration. "And you, daughter, do you think I'm too old for that?" Olivia countered, a rare, playful spark dancing in her eyes. "I'm only a little over 50, and I have half my life ahead of me. And you, if you're in the mood, take Kiko and come visit us. We have a big house with a view of the sea." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and rose, its last coppery reflections dancing across the shimmering water, Olivia sat on the wide, welcoming porch of the little house by the sea. A contented sigh escaped her lips as she watched Peter, his brow furrowed in gentle concentration, diligently repairing an old wicker lounge chair. The rhythmic creak of the wicker, the distant whisper of the waves, and the quiet camaraderie between them filled the air. In just a few short weeks, this charming cottage had become their shared home, imbued with the soft hum of burgeoning affection. Olivia already knew precisely where Peter's reading glasses were tucked away, and he, without a single prompting word, would intuitively brew her favourite fragrant tea just the way she liked it. A month later, Olivia got a letter. It trembled slightly in Olivia's fingers as she opened it. Chloe's neat, purposeful handwriting filled the page, informing her that she and little Kiko, if Mum didn't mind, would come to visit for the holidays. A quiet thrill, a fragile hope, unfurled within Olivia. Then her eyes caught a postscript, scrawled almost as an afterthought. "I've filed for divorce." Tucked inside the envelope, folded carefully, was a child's drawing rendered in bright, hopeful crayons. The vast, welcoming sea, a radiant sun, a little boat bobbing on the waves, and 2 seagulls soaring freely above. Olivia's smile was genuine now, a joyful, unburdened expression that reached her eyes. Peter, wiping his hands on a canvas apron, looked at her questioningly, his steady gaze full of silent inquiry. "My daughter and granddaughter are coming to visit us," Olivia announced, her voice brimming with warmth and a profound sense of peace. He simply nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. Then, without a word, he turned back to the doorframe, picked up his hammer, and drove in another sturdy hook for a towel. A house by the sea, it seemed, possessed an effortless capacity to expand, always finding room when there was boundless hope. That night, tucked beneath their blankets, they lay listening to the hypnotic rhythm of the waves breaking on the shore. Each crash and retreat felt like the steady, comforting heartbeat of a new family taking root. Perhaps not perfectly even, but undeniably, beautifully alive. As Olivia drifted off to sleep, she dreamed not of old sorrows, but of a sunrise painting the ocean in hues of pearl and rose. 2 pairs of intertwined footprints, already etched in the damp morning sand, waiting for 2 more to join them. A path laid out by love, and the enduring promise of good in the world.